So welcome everybody to our webinar today with Phil Ives. I'm Will Squires. I'm the co-founder of gcCrescendo, and today we're bringing a session, a half-an-hour session with Phil. And Phil is a partner at Bean Partners, sorry, which is a consulting firm. And I'll let Phil introduce himself and give a background about what his how he got to where he is. But the main thrust of our talk today is about controlling growth. And Phil is looking at it from a perspective of sustainable growth and how to make sure that as a founder of your business, you're able to control growth in a way that is sustainable. So Phil, I'll pass over to you. If you can tell us a bit about yourself and introduce yourself, that'd be great. And we can take it from there.
Great, thank you, Will. Afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the invite to get involved in this, and thanks for asking me to share a few thoughts specifically on today's topic, the business control growth. It's probably become kind of my favorite topic as I've sort of developed my understanding of it over the last 10 years, and now realizing that it's the thing I most wish I'd known and understood in the 20 years prior to that. Made a material difference both in terms of business and also on a personal level. So in terms of what I was hoping to cover off in our time together was just quick, a little bit of a frame up and a little bit of background about me to give you some context for what we talk about. Then wanted to kick a couple of statistics around business growth and to get a bit of perspective on it as a topic and try to understand how hard, how difficult does growth actually appear to be. And then I've got one simple framework, a couple of slides that I'd like to share with everybody, which is the specific uncontrolled growth life cycle. So that's where we're going to spend our time, if that's okay. Just to frame things up briefly, I've been on the advisory side of life, currently in Bean Partners as a partner, which is a business specialized in supporting ambitious founders and CEOs to grow their businesses, to fund their businesses, and ultimately to sell their businesses. Before I got into this part of my career, I'd previously spent 20 years building, running 3 different businesses, all B2B media businesses for what it's worth, all of whom enjoyed fast growth. 2 of them technically were gazelle companies. I'll leave you to sort of look that up and see what that means, but technically we were reasonably successful. I can't say it always felt like that, which is part of what we're talking about today. And in all of the businesses, I was a great advocate in getting the teams together on a regular basis, and we would sometimes survey them and say, what topics would you like to have covered and who would you like to present? And one year, one bright spark wrote back that if he only had 1 hour left to live, he would like me to present, because apparently when I present, I can make an hour seem like a lifetime. The good news is we've only got half an hour, so hopefully this will only feel like half a lifetime. But it also allows me perhaps just to make this point very quickly, which I don't do this for a living. I'm not a speaker in that sense. I get wheeled out from time to time to talk on certain topics, but I know therefore I do have certain habits and traits that can be unhelpful, such as gabbling and going too fast. So apologies if that's your experience, but I think the good news is this is recorded. So if I go too fast over anything, hopefully you'll have a chance to go back over it. And I am going to go at a pace because it is a huge topic. We could easily spend a day or days on this, and that means our opportunity to sort of interact is reasonably limited. But I'm going to try and leave a sort of 5 to 10 minutes at the end to see if there's any questions, and if I haven't managed to make everybody lose the will to live by the end, I'm happy to take any of those.
Actually, just to jump in on that for everyone, if you have a question, please put it in the chat, and just remember it, and we can come to the end. As Phil said, we're going to have a Q&A session at the end. But yeah, if you put it in the chat, and then I can kind of collect them and present them to Phil. Or if you want, you can bring them up in the chat yourself. But please do pop them in the chat. That'd be great. Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, if I can rely on you to capture those, I've proven in the past that I'm unable to talk and follow the chat at the same time. So that would be helpful. And I think the final thing I was going to say in terms of frame up, which is about Bean Partners, because I know this is very relevant to everybody who's involved in gcCrescendo, is we are a purpose-driven business. FYI, our purpose is to empower the efficient deployment of capital for the good of humanity. So just FYI. So let's dive in. Let's kick a couple of statistics around to get some perspective on today's conversation. Being partners, we're obsessed with data and intelligence and statistics. And whilst statistics aren't everything, they are something. So here's a couple of facts. Just I thought might add a bit of colour to today. Last year, 2023, in the UK, there were more businesses founded than ever before. According to the stats, 900,000 businesses were incorporated in the UK in 2023, which I think works out at about 1.7 a minute. And here's the bad news, that the standard statistic around business failure is that 85% of those will be gone at some point in year 3. So do the maths on that. That's 670,000, I don't know, something like that. And 50% won't get past the end of year 2. If you're an e-commerce business, you have a 90% probability of being gone by day 46. So that's the world you're operating in if you've chosen to found a business. So let's look at a statistic related to growth and statistics. I don't know if we want to have a little bit of a play here. If I ask a question, just see if you want to drop a response into the chat. But I wonder if you know, or if you want to guess, what percentage of businesses actually ever achieve £1 million of revenue? If you're sitting on the call and want to dump a number in there, you might engage the grey cells in the conversation. I'll keep going and see if something pops up. Hello, Mira.
Can you clarify it, Phil? So what do you mean? So new businesses who make $1 million, or all businesses?
All businesses at any point in their entire lifetime. How many businesses in their entire lifetime ever turn over £1 million?
Okay, I'll take a guess.
A guess. I'm seeing what pops up. I'll throw another one into the mix at the moment while you ask that one. I wonder if you could hazard a guess at how many businesses ever turn over £10 million. So let me offer you the answer to the first question, which is it's 4%. 4% of businesses ever turn over £1 million. And 0.4% of businesses ever turn over £10 million. And I could keep going. Just out of interest, 0.02% of businesses ever managed to achieve 25% growth every year on year, for a minimum of 5 years, from a base of £1 million. So if we were running this as a sort of face-to-face interactive workshop with a load more time, this would be the point at which I then turn to you and say, so what do you deduce from those statistics? And what always comes back from that exercise is people going, well, obviously statistically, actually, it doesn't happen much at all. And therefore we kind of conclude that it's probably challenging. It's actually difficult. Now, of course, some businesses don't want to grow to a certain size, but I have to say, in the decade or more I've been advising businesses, the vast majority of businesses that I've interacted with, founders, CEOs, wish their business was bigger than it is. Now, there are what are the key factors to be in that category? Thank you, Mira. Well, I'm going to attempt to answer that as best I can in the next 15 minutes or so. There are a number of factors, and there are some that are on some level obvious, such as access to capital. There is a direct correlation between business growth and access to capital, etc., etc. But the perspective I want to offer today is the bit that we don't understand, in my view, and actually is probably the single biggest reason why businesses may grow but will hit these kind of moments in time where they go no further, or even, heaven forbid, they go the other way. And this is the life cycle of uncontrolled growth. So what most of us do, and I did it 3 times, was to grow a business in a way that I now reflect on and go, you know what, it wasn't controlled growth. So the model I'm about to ask Will to bring up actually originates from the fund management industry. So if you imagine you're a fund manager, what you're doing on a day-to-day basis is meeting all kinds of different businesses and trying to work out which ones you want to invest in. And the guy that created this particular model, actually, he was a fund manager, he was a mathematician originally. You'll see there's not many numbers on the slide, because what he was looking for was something that was much more of a quick cut through in terms of understanding whether he was interested in investing or deploying the analysts, if you like, on a business to understand whether it was investable. And the second slide, if you would, Will, is what I'm talking about. We call it stages. It is about stages of growth, uncontrolled growth. And you'll see down the bottom, actually, the indicator as to where a business is up to in its life cycle is not typically anything to do with numbers. It's to do with the energy that is sitting in the business at any moment in time. So I don't know what your typical working days look like. I can tell you that a typical working day for me looks like I'll go into one business in the morning and another business in the afternoon. And sometimes I'll walk into a business in the morning and go, wow, this is great. I can really imagine leaping out of bed in the morning to come and work here. And sometimes I'll walk into a different business in the afternoon, and the second I'm through the doors and into reception, I'm starting to think to myself, I'm kind of glad I don't have to drag myself into this place every day. What am I tuning into? I'm tuning into the feelings. I'm tuning into the energy. And in this model, what we say is that all businesses go through exactly the same stages in the same sequence, albeit in their own time frame. So you'll see there's nothing there on the bottom around time frame, but it all starts at day one on the left-hand side, and it might take one business 5 years to get to the middle of the framework. It might take another 25 to get to exactly the same point. So that bit's kind of over to you, but the actual stages we tend to see are precisely the same. And we're always looking to check and see whether things are changing in the world, or whether certain things seem to hold true. So a couple of times a year, we get a room full of business owners together and we workshop this conversation. We don't show them the model. We just start off with a flip chart and a load of pens, and we kick off and ask them questions like, well, okay, so tell us, on day one, when you started off, what was the overarching feeling in the business? And you'll see the word on the far left is excited. More than one feeling, obviously, but that was the overarching feeling. And we say, okay, great. Did it stay like that? What we tend to get then is a load of people raise their eyebrows and go, no, not likely. They say it kind of all went a bit mad. It went a bit bonkers, and we're running around and we're doing everything. You'll see the word there. It's frantic. It's not a bad word. It's kind of fun on some level. It's frenetic. I can tell you stories of a self-made billionaire who still to this day goes on about the very early days of his very first business. He was personally in his 2-bedroom flat in Muswell Hill, maxed out to the tune of 5K, and he's sticking the stamps on envelopes, and he's running down the road and he's sticking them through a postbox, and he's running back to the flat. Phone goes, picks up the phone. It's a client. What do I do with one of those? Got to get an invoice out, etc., etc., etc. And it's that kind of frenetic energy, which on some level is quite attractive and often attracts the first few staff members. You'll see there's a line there for typical staff numbers at these different stages. So that's often where we got, a couple of people now working with us, and we're all rah-rah and, va-va-voom and all that kind of stuff. On it goes. And starts to get quite tricky. You'll see the word is anxious. So I know quite often I'm meeting an anxious business. If I hear an awful lot of deadlines, if I hear things like, oh, if we haven't generated this much revenue or this much profit or this many clients, whatever the metric is by a particular date, we might have to say, tried hard, but didn't work. And that actually is a massive graveyard for business failure around there. Those that managed to push on past there, well, they hit that funny looking thing, which we call the first brick wall, where you can see that the overarching feeling in the business fundamentally shifts. It now goes to confidence. So this is going to work. This is working kind of moment. And that's the moment at which we make the investment that will dictate what the next phase of the business looks like, which, as you'll see, is the core growth. So this is the good, strong, steady kind of growth after an initial phase of frantic again, because if we've just invested in our business, we kind of get anxious and frantic once again, because that needs to pay back. Once it starts to pay back, off we go into, you'll see the word, this is relative, but into the calm phase of the business. Some people call it good times. This is where you're in good, strong, steady, incremental growth, lots of good celebrations because you've just booked the next biggest client or had the next best sales quarter, and then again the next best sales quarter, etc. On it goes. And actually that turns into some sense of gratification. There's a real sense of this is why I did it. This is kind of amazing. And now everything we do just works, and everybody we hire is a superstar, and it's amazing. And that's kind of the best part of the entire cycle. Unfortunately, it's also usually the shortest part of the cycle. Why is that? For a couple of reasons. Well, one is if you hit that kind of payback moment, we often upgrade, whether that be our own personal lifestyle. So I remember so clearly in my first business, the night we hit that point, it was the night I came home to my wife and I said, we've been talking about getting a Mauritius for years. Let's book it. And why don't we apply that same kind of formula to the business? Let's go get some better offices and all those kind of things. So more or less overnight, we can get ourselves from a want to have to kind of frame of mind, because I now need to generate how much more revenue in order just to meet the costs and stand still. And the other thing that starts to happen is that a lot of the systems and structures and processes that we put in place sort of back towards the left-hand side of the chart, well, they now start to creak, because we keep on growing. With growth comes exponential complexity. I don't know if you know, but if you go from 30 to 40 people, for example, you can expect the complexities in your business to grow by 400% or more. So if you haven't got the systems in the place, the inefficiencies grow. And I remember it well, and I'll get dragged into a whole ton of conversations that I don't particularly want to be involved in. Why? Because I'm not that interested in coming into the office every day to talk about systems and structures and processes. It's not where my energy sits. And also, you know what? I'm not very good at it. So I personally now start to become increasingly frustrated. On that gets worse, and I start to spread the love, if you like, around the business, because if I'm feeling frustrated and stressed, why the hell shouldn't everybody else? And by the way, with those increasing inefficiencies, I'm seeing my profitability, I'm seeing my margin go the other way. And for quite a lot of business owners and founders, you know what? This is actually a really serious moment in time. This is where we do see health scares. It's where we see marital breakdowns. It's where, and I'm happy to admit it, in my first business, I go to the doctor because I'm manifesting all kinds of symptoms of stress, and I end up on the happy pills. I end up on antidepressants. And now I've got days that I can't even get into the office. I'm driving down the New Kings Road here in London, and after 5 minutes, I turn left and left again and go home, because I can't get into the office, because the only conversations I'm having are with what I used to call the BMWs, bitches, moaners, and whiners, who are all complaining about why nothing's working as well as it used to in the good old days. On it goes. You know what gets even worse? And you smash into that thing which we call the second brick wall. The second brick wall is a moment of fundamental disillusion. This is the why did I do this moment in time. And that's where quite a lot of business owners, including me in my first business, go at things in completely the wrong way, which is to run around the business and go, guys, back to basics. Let's go back to doing it the way we used to do it in the good old days. And I should have been shot, because what I was missing was the critical point, which is that which gets you there is not that which gets you into the next phase of growth, which I won't bore you with the reasons we call that platform growth, but it's about becoming a truly sustainable, scalable business that's got cultural, commercial balance and isn't dependent on anybody. And it could be a painful phase. We see businesses often 5, 6, 7 years in and around the second brick wall, constantly trying to work out what to do and not realizing that there's a whole different level of functionality and capability that is required to get back into growth. And because that is difficult to work out and costly, the majority of businesses don't actually achieve it. They go one of two ways, which is number 6 and number 7 in the model here. Some go, you know what, this is all just too hard. Let's get rid of most of the clients. Let's get rid of most of the staff, and let's just go back to some kind of lifestyle business, some kind of income play. We call that plateau, which in itself is probably just a slower version of 0.7, which according to the McKinsey statistic is where 85% of businesses that get to the second brick wall ultimately go into terminal decline. Now, I'm not going to talk to the rest of the model to the right, because these are obviously, you can see from the staff numbers in the bottom, they're into sort of much bigger businesses. We're getting into corporate kind of territory, which from my understanding, Will, is not the typical profile of who's on these calls. So on some level, I'm kind of going to hit the pause button there and just summarize and go, my experience is most businesses try to scale, most businesses fail to scale, most business owners fall out of love somewhere along the line. And it's because essentially they experience uncontrolled growth. And as I've now come to realize, there is an alternative called controlled growth, which is about beginning with the end in mind and understanding you can build a business from that point, including systems, processes, structures, all that lovely stuff in place from the very start. And had I done that, I would look 20 years younger than I look today. It's about as fast as I can trot through that, Will. I hope it wasn't too fast, but let me pause there.
That's great. Thanks, Phil. I'm just I'm multitasking myself, trying to screen share and unmute. No, that's great. There was there's a lot of red there, isn't there? I see the red and green, the good and the bad, and it's yeah, it's not a pretty picture.
Yeah, I mean, if you found a business, I don't know if you realize, but you sign yourself up to the subset of society that's most likely to suffer from anxiety and sleep deprivation and all those lovely things. And there's why.
So I suppose the questions that everyone's going to be thinking about is the controlling the growth and having the controlled growth. We've only got 7 minutes left to go, but to put the kind of positive spin on it, what are the things that, or the quick tips that you might be able to allude to, which are the ways of avoiding all those reds?
Yeah. So this is quite a challenge in the time that we've got, but let me put it this way: it's quite typical for a business that gets towards or in the second brick wall. And by the way, only 5% of businesses get that far. So you can actually be an incredibly successful business, but it just feels like hell. But a lot of businesses, when they get there, because it just feels so terrible, all they really know is they don't want to be there. So very often my first advocacy is, if you haven't got it, you need to really take time out to paint a picture of what the business looks like at some other point in the future, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever that may be, because then you've got context for everything. And you avoid, here's my favorite word in the English language. It's to coddywomple. I don't know if any of you have heard of coddywomple, but it means to travel with purpose to an undefined destination. And that is what most second brick wall businesses do. They just try and go harder and faster, but you know what? It could well be in the wrong direction. And it's only if I've got that clarity of what that next phase of the business looks like that I can actually then figure out what I need to put in place to achieve it. And here's the difficult bit. Very often what I've got in place now is not what I need in order to achieve the next phase of the business. And that can mean saying goodbye to people who've been maybe incredibly loyal for a long period of time. But if they don't have the capability, if they don't have the attitudinal approach, if you like, to wanting to be part of a bigger, more sustainable, more scalable business that's probably much more systemized and got clearer standards and measurements and all those kind of things, then it's time to swap them out sometimes. And with that context of where are we trying to get, there are 3 critical things I would argue that we need to really get our head around at this point. One is, what is the functional structure that is required to deliver that? By which I mean, do we really know what the roles are that are now required in order to be able to deliver that new vision? Very often they're different roles to the roles you've had up to this point. And by the way, this applies to me, you, us, the founders, the CEOs as well. There's sometimes an important moment of realization that we are the blocker, and maybe I don't have the capability to do the next bit. If I'm clear on what the roles are, then we can truly review, have we got the capabilities in place in order to fill those roles? And I'm afraid the answer there is 25 to 30% of the time, no, you haven't got them. And the third piece of the puzzle, which we could easily fill an entire day on in itself, but is, have you got some way of running your business as a mathematical formula, which means you can calculate precisely what the right number of people you need in order to deliver that new vision? And most business owners, they know what their revenue is, they know what their headcount is, they know what their profitability, but they have no understanding of what the actual number is that they need in order to deliver that vision, which means invariably we've got too many people, and therefore we haven't got the profit and we haven't got the margin that we need.
So all of those 3 are people orientated then, really. So
they are. And there may be other things. There may be product issues. Sometimes the product is no longer fit for purpose because competition have piled in. So it's not that there aren't other things, but actually if I don't get the people bit in place first, I can't really figure out whether it's a product issue that we also need to look at or a routes to market issue. So in the second brick wall, we typically start there. It's all around management systems and those kind of lovely words, which most entrepreneurs don't leap out of bed in the morning saying, oh, I'm off to do some management systems. But if you don't, you'll in all likelihood find yourself trying to fix the wrong problem.
And so, I mean, anyone else jump in? Feel free to jump in. I'm just kind of asking questions that come to my mind. How does a founder go about actually educating themselves on those 3 things that you're talking about? How would you understand which roles are required?
Yeah, so it's slightly hard to answer that without sounding like I'm now going to try and sell me and my business. But let me put it this way. I look back now and go, oh my God, I so wish I had been more open to the concept, if you like, of external advice and other people that have been there, done that. I don't think I was particularly arrogant about it. I just thought we were different, that people didn't understand what was going on for me in my world. And that model that I just shared with you, hopefully, helps everybody understand that we all go through this same experience. We might call different functions in the business different names and all those kind of things, but at a contextual level, the issues are the same issues. And so there is knowledge about this stuff. There are people way cleverer than me who are able to do all that lovely number crunchy stuff that will tell you precisely what the headcount is you need if you want to achieve a 35 million pound business. And it's almost certainly going to be a different number to the one that you currently assume it to be. So I don't think that goes some way to answering your question.
Yeah, it does. I think that's that's what we're trying to do with gcCrescendo as well. It's share the knowledge and bring the experiences together for
I
people
wish I'd been part of something like this. I swear to God, I would have had a very different story of 20 years.
I think I think it's fairly, as you say, it's common, isn't it, for people to not to think that their businesses are different and the same. I think it's really good to see the stats and have the understanding of that process, of that graph that you've shown us. And in actual fact, a lot of the problems are the same. So I think that's really useful. I hope people, we're coming to the end of the call. I hope people have found that useful. And if there's any questions you have, do feel free to reach out on the platform, and I can get them over to Phil. And I appreciate it's been a whistle stop tour. So thank you, Phil, for delivering it perfectly on time. But I feel like I've kind of asked the impossible, which is summarize something in half an hour, which requires a lot more. So thank you again.
A pleasure. And yeah, genuinely, if you get questions, we'll pass them over. I'm more than happy to respond. So
that's brilliant. And that's fantastic. Thanks, Phil. And thanks to everyone that's joined. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Hi, Nikki. Thanks for your help. And if you've got any questions, as Phil says, he's happy to answer, so let us know.